Welcome back. Her Justice supports women in poverty in New York City by enlisting and guiding volunteer lawyers to offer free legal assistance, addressing both individual and systemic legal challenges. In November, they unveiled their latest policy report, sharing crucial stories and data shedding light on the current workings of the U.S. immigration and civil justice systems. Here now joining me is the Director of Immigration Practice at Her Justice, Susanna Saul. Susanna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, can you provide an overview of Her Justice's mission and its role in supporting women living in poverty in New York City?
Yes, so Her Justice stands with women living in poverty in New York City by providing free legal services through a pro bono first model. And the areas of practice that we focus on are family law, matrimonial law, and immigration.
Now, how does the Her Justice pro bono first model work, and how does it address both individual and systemic legal barriers for women?
Sure. So we know that there are not enough free legal service providers in New York City to meet the demand of low income individuals who need free legal services to navigate the very complex legal systems that impact their lives. So, what Her Justice does is partner with pro bono attorneys at large law firms in New York City who are volunteering to take on full representation for clients who cannot afford attorneys in very complex legal matters.
Can you share some key insights from the policy report, stories from immigrant survivors of gender based violence, the impact of work authorization?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So we knew from representing clients, we have over 30 years of experience working with immigrant survivors of gender based violence. That's the population of immigrants that we work primarily with. We knew that from working with them that the moment in the legal process where they received their work permit was a pivotal moment in their life. We knew that it made the prospect of self sufficiency, of economic stability for themselves and their children real, because that is the moment that they're able to enter the workforce, get a social security number, get a stable job. We knew this anecdotally, but we wanted to obtain qualitative and quantitative data in a methodical way. So we conducted a survey in which we interviewed extensively our clients about the impact of having employment authorization on their lives. And we did find um, more than we thought was a huge impact. So, for example, before they had work permits, the weekly earnings of our clients were about $200 a week. After they got a work permit, it rose to an average of $500 a week. The working conditions that they experienced before they got a work permit involved a lot of instances of discrimination, harassment. They got abused at work. There were no sick days off, no days off to care for sick children, which we know is a huge issue. And after they got their work permits, they reported that they were treated as fairly as other workers who also had the legal right to work. There was no abuse, there was no harassment. They could have insurance, they could have sick time. We also noticed that the housing conditions were hugely impacted by having work permits. Before they had work permits, they reported being in unsafe environments, overcrowded housing, in environments that made them feel sometimes sick. And then after they were able to get their work permit, because they had average increases in their weekly earnings, they were able to move into safe environments, more stable housing. And they felt just overall a lack of empowerment before they had their work permits. They felt like they couldn't make decisions for their family. They didn't feel comfortable accessing public benefits or other types of services like hospitals, the police. After they got their work permits, they felt that they could access these very critical public services, and they felt that they belonged here. And so they felt that they had a huge psychological benefit as a result also of having a work permit.
Now, after listening to these stories and creating the report, Were there any critical recommendations towards, just any changes in policies or just, making policies to further support and ensure that these immigrant survivors felt a little bit more safe or a little bit more confident, in work and other areas of their daily lives?
Yes, absolutely. So the most important takeaway is really that we think that work permits should be issued very quickly in the journey towards legal status. So currently, issuance of work permits can vary. The quickest that our clients have seen work permits could be 6 to 9 months. But there are other cases, and I won't get into the legal technicalities, but there are other cases where there are commonly delays of up to sometimes years before they can get a work permit. And so we believe that swift issuance of work permits is really a huge benefit towards undocumented immigrant survivors of gender-based violence getting to a place of safety and stability, which is really the whole purpose of certain forms of immigration relief that is specifically geared towards um, survivors of gender-based violence. So in some ways, because of the delays of issuances of work permits, the entire purpose of these forms of relief is undermined. So we think that the swift issuance, no more than 6 months, um, of work permits should be an implementable policy and practice. We also think that this should be legislatively enacted. So even though USCIS, the Immigration Service, could potentially do this on their own, we think it needs to be a legislative change because we think there needs to be accountability for this, and it should endure in the future no matter who is in charge of the immigration system. It should be codified in legislation. We think that there should be appropriate funding so that adjudicators um, can grant these work permits more swiftly. We think that there should basically be more dedication to community outreach to improve awareness around immigration remedies and around what a work permit is and some of the protections that exist even for workers who don't have work permits. We also have recommendations for some New York State policymakers about things that we think would go a long way towards making sure that undocumented immigrant survivors have access to safety and stability.
Now, there's a long-standing issue in New York's legal system regarding the needs of undocumented immigrants. Can you elaborate on the challenges that the legal system currently poses for immigrants, both recent arrivals and long-term residents?
There are so many obstacles in the legal system. So, one of the biggest challenges is that the legal system is incredibly complicated. So, somebody who is just arriving in this country, or even somebody who's been here for a very long time, to even understand what the immigration system is and the potential possible pathways to lawful status, there needs to be access to a qualified, licensed immigration attorney or an immigration expert who knows how to navigate those minefields and labyrinths of laws. Currently, there aren't enough legal services providers who can provide that kind of navigation, that kind of representation and guidance for free.
Now, what short-term solutions are being proposed or implemented to address the immediate needs of migrants arriving to New York City?
So I think New York City has done a lot to try to address the gaps in legal services. There have been programs to expand access to solid, qualified, and expert immigration legal advice, but there still is a long way to go. We still have waiting lists of people who can't access lawyers. And just to give you a sense of why, immigration cases are just incredibly complicated and they last for a really long time. So a single lawyer can't really take on a lot of cases.
And I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I think for a lot of people on the outside looking in, um, don't realize like how large the entire system is and how many moving components are a part of it. Can you kind of just detail, I guess, for those who may not understand, how your organization steps in and kind of, assists people on this journey that, as you mentioned, could possibly take even years to kind of face?
Yes. So we partner with community-based organizations who have access to people in communities all over New York City. We rely on our partners, on caseworkers, on community advocates, sometimes on elected officials' offices to sort of get people in the community who need help to understand that there are places, there are organizations who can help them for free. And there's also a big barrier of trust because a lot of people don't want to talk about their immigration situation. They are ashamed. They are made to feel like they are outsiders and they don't belong. And so even just talking to somebody about their immigration status can take a huge act of trust. And so we rely on our advocates in communities who have built that trust with people who can tell them, hey, look, we know that it's scary to talk about this stuff, but there are organizations out there that can help you.
Now, I'm curious to know that because the organization focuses primarily on women, how do you address women with children and some of the unique challenges that may come about when you are dealing with somebody who has a family?
So many complications. Low income families in New York City are facing so many obstacles, and sometimes the legal case isn't even the priority for them, right? So, housing crises, food insecurity, changes in public benefits post COVID, right? Because the Medicaid rules changed and people don't know how to navigate that to even get adequate health care, go to a doctor. So that's another reason why we partner with advocates. We can take care of the legal piece and we really focus on the legal piece. And so when we partner with advocates in communities, social workers, caseworkers, then we can really have a collaborative effort to address lots of obstacles in the lives of families and women, so that the legal case can also be addressed as part of a comprehensive sort of plan for the holistic well-being of a family.
Now, you mentioned advocates and the role that they play in kind of building that trust with the community and helping the organization kind of reach that mission. What are some of the qualities or some of the things that the organization looks for in these advocates, and how do they find these people who have already built that trust or who may have been already doing the work prior to kind of like collaborate with the organization?
It's such a good question. I mean, partnerships are built over a really long period of time. We try to do outreach presentations. We try to, let people know on social media about our services. But many of the relationships we have just come about over the years of just knowing each other, being in the same spaces, going to conferences together. Sometimes we work in the same organizations, and as our careers change, we keep in touch with each other. But we're always looking for new advocates to partner with as well.
And I like to hear that because it sounds like, you know, the saying, it takes a village. It's showing that it's more than just paperwork because we're dealing with a lot of people's livelihoods. And it's showing that, you know, at least I like to hear that it is a sense of community and that even if you've moved on or done other things that, you know, that community is still kind of there. And I think it's so important in this work. You know, do you have any maybe experiences that you may have been a part of or that you've seen that kind of really show how that community really, the community that the organization builds has actually really helped members of the community that you're serving?
So it does take a village, 100%. I agree with you. And it takes a lot of work from lots of different people in lots of different ways. So, for example, one thing that happens in the lives of many of our clients is that when a client comes to us from a community organization, we pair them with a pro bono lawyer who starts working with them on their immigration case. And that relationship becomes very close over time. And so the client often will trust the lawyer with things that maybe she's never told anybody else in her life. And then the lawyer can then come back to us and say, hey, this is not really part of her legal case, but here she's dealing with an eviction, or she doesn't have health insurance, or she got a letter saying her health insurance is going to be cut off. Then we have connections with many other advocates doing many other types of law or casework. And so then we can reach back out to those organizations and make sure to get that the client gets the help she needs with those other areas of her life.
Now, how can collaboration with organizations like Her Justice and other advocacy groups enhance the effectiveness of policies aimed at resolving the migrant crisis?
Well, I think that what we've come to call the migrant crisis isn't a crisis with people, it is a crisis with systems. So, the more that we can really engage with each other, talk about the issues, talk about the obstacles, gather data, gather research, and lift it up to decision makers on the city, state, and national level, the more we can uplift the voices of people who otherwise would be too ashamed or too scared to talk about the issues they're facing. And when we can uplift those issues relentlessly, continuously, then we can start to make some change in the systems.
Now, where can people go to learn more, whether they either want to collaborate or maybe they're doing similar work? And also, where can people who may need these services go to kind of look for that and utilize them?
Go to our website, herjustice.org. We're also at social media, Her Justice, on Instagram, um, and reach out. There's lots of different portals on the website, depending on what you're looking for, to reach out. I will say that sometimes one of the biggest challenges are capacity, right? We only have a finite number of people working, and there are so many people that need help, and we're pulled in a lot of different directions. So please just be patient with us if we can't get back to you based on your question. Please have patience and faith that we will get to you. We will not forget about you, but sometimes we just can't do things exactly when we want to.
Understood. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of the very, very important work that your organization is doing. Just throughout my time learning about this, there is a need for these services, and I can understand how the organization is doing the most that they can to assist as many people as possible. So even you being here right now and kind of having this discussion is truly appreciated. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate your attention and interest in this issue, and thank you so much for your wonderful questions.